Hello guys, hello. And today we are going to do some more React.js. Let me turn on some songs. Out of my mind, I lost a da 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 da. Scrimbas. Go to la vie, so muckety. Right, so we are at why React declarative.
This is an imperative way to program. Perfect. Now this example's a little bit on the nose because if you were really just putting something static that had nothing to do with user interaction, you probably would just go to your HTML page and stick it right inside the div here, right? But with React, we're building our entire page in JavaScript. And so doing something imperatively this way, where I have to tell it step by step how to create the element and then to add some text content and then add a class name and then append it to the div here, right? But with React, we're building our entire page in JavaScript. And so doing something imperatively this way, where I have to tell it step by step how to create the element and then to add some text content and then add a class name and then append it to the DOM, that's going to get old pretty fast, especially even with something mildly more complicated than a single H1, like a very simple web page like this. As soon as we have more than one element, suddenly our 4 lines of code will become probably dozens or maybe even hundreds of lines of JavaScript code just to create and append all of these elements in the correct order and in the correct way. And so that brings us back to the idea of writing our code declaratively. And React allows us to do that in a really simple way. As we see back up top, when we comment this out and uncomment this, we essentially get to write our JavaScript as if it were HTML. We are relying
exactly.
on React
This way is like
the
same thing.
To turn what we have declaratively written as an H1 into the JavaScript code that's needed to append it to the DOM. In fact, if I were being strict and wanted to make this more equivalent, in order to add a class name, I can just add a class name as if this were an
Let me set up everything first, and then
HTML element. Again, this is class name instead of class for a good reason, which we'll talk about. But that's a pretty minor difference to be able to do all of these lines of code in one single section right here. And that difference is going to compound as we get into more and more complicated UIs like we see here. So at this point, I could probably continue talking about different reasons that we're choosing to use React and that it will be really beneficial for you to learn React. As you see on my little list here, it's a very hireable skill and it's actively maintained by really skilled people at Facebook. However, at this point, I think we're overdue to just jump into the syntax, get your hands on the keyboard, and start learning and practicing React. So when you're ready, let's keep moving forward.
JSX. Let's see.
Okay, let's finally address this elephant in the room, what we're looking at here. Why we have what looks like HTML stuffed right inside our JavaScript. Well, fairly early on in the days of React, the React team created a syntax that's called JSX. JSX stands for JavaScript XML, but that's not terribly important for you to memorize. What's most important is to think of it as sort of a flavor of JavaScript that looks a lot like HTML. With the introduction of JSX into React, it really made it so that React was very declarative instead of imperative. We can see up above what it took for us to create an H1, give it some text content, and give it a class name in regular vanilla JavaScript. But with JSX, the benefit is that we can just write what we're already used to writing with HTML. Now there's a couple of small differences. For example, instead of using class, I need to use class name. So I might say class name
not
equals
as right.
header,
Okay,
for example,
not too shabby.
Other of these.
Like this way is way better than compared to this one. This one is, what is this? Basically, you write a whole program like this, it would be a nightmare. But look at this. You can assign everything into the roots. Like, instead of declaring, oh, this, blah, blah, blah.
For the most part, with JSX,
ridiculous.
We can just write the HTML that we're used to writing. At first, it might be a little bit confusing to write your HTML inside of your JavaScript, but I promise as you start doing React, it's really going to start making sense. You're going to learn to love JSX. Now, one thing that was really helpful for me to understand as I was learning was to see the difference between what JSX is and what our regular DOM elements are. So I'm going to do a few things. I'm going to uncomment these lines of code here. And I'm also going to take this piece of JSX and set it to a variable. We'll call it element. Then I can fix my Reactdom.render by just putting element down here, and this will work exactly the same. But this allows us to console log it. So let's console log element, and I'll hit save so that this code will run. I'll open the console, and we'll see the differences here. First of all, on line 4, we are console logging the DOM element that we created with document.createElement. And that's what shows up in our console as what looks like an HTML element here. So that's this line right here. However, when we console log our element that we created with JSX, what actually got returned to us was this. Let me copy this out. And the seeds.x and set it to a variable. We'll call it element. Then I can fix my Reactdom.render by just putting element down here, and this will work exactly the same. But this allows us to console log it. So let's console log element. And I'll hit save so that this code will run. I'll open the
console log element. Yes, this is JSX. Console log element. Reactdom.render. H1 headers. And then the type.
Console, and we'll see the differences here. First of all, on line 4.
Right, give me a moment. I have to check something first. Okay, so we redo this.
The React team created a syntax that's called JSX.
JSX.
Looks a lot like HTML. With the introduction of JSX into React, it really made it so that React was very declarative instead of imperative. We can see up above what it's
declarative is good. Imperative,
H1, give it some text content,
slow,
and give it a class name,
complex.
and regular vanilla JavaScript.
It's complex for no reason. It is how can I say it? Like it's unreasonably hard.
But with JSX, the benefit is that we can just write what we're already used to writing with HTML. Now there's a couple of small differences. For example, instead of using class, I need to use class name. So I might say class name equals header, for example.
Yeah, you spend like 4 more words instead of, how many is this? Like 15? I don't know. But this is a way better.
And there's a few other of these, but for the most
the less
part,
you write,
JSX.
the less you write on something out, the less problem you're going to have. Less syntax errors. The lower chance that you got a syntax errors or something like that. Always write something short.
We can just write the HTML that we're used to writing. At first, it might be a little bit confusing to write your HTML inside of your JavaScript, but I promise as you start doing React, it's really going to start making sense. You're going to learn to love JSX. Now, one thing that was really helpful for me to understand as I was learning was to see the difference between what JSX is and what our regular DOM elements are. So I'm going to do a few things. I'm going to uncomment these lines of code here. I'm also going to take this piece of JSX and set it to a variable. We'll call it element. Then I can fix my Reactdom.render by just putting element down here, and this will work exactly the same. But this allows us to console log it. So let's console log element, and I'll hit save so that this code will run. I'll open the console, and we'll see the differences here. First of all, on line 4, we are console logging the DOM element that we created with document.createElement. And that's what shows up in our console as what looks like an HTML element here. So that's this line right here. However, when we console log our element that we created with JSX, what actually got returned to us was this. Let me copy this out. And we can see that this is just a regular JavaScript object. Let me clean it up just a little bit to make it even more clear. So in the end, what we get from JSX, or rather what React is creating with JSX, is actually just plain old JavaScript objects. Those objects describe the DOM element that we want React to put onto the page for us. And if we look closely, we can see some interesting information here. First of all, we see that it has very similar properties, like we have class name, where we're setting that to header, script object.
Wait.
So, however, when we console log our element that we created with JSX, what actually got returned to us was this. Let me copy this out. And we can see that this is just a regular JavaScript object. Let me clean it up just a little bit to make it even more clear. So in the end, what
this kind of look like JSON to me, like of the object. Yeah, this look like an object. This is an object. Not JSONs, guys. I was delusional, but this look like an object type assigned to H1. So basically, it's just turning out elements into an object.
We get from JSX, or rather what React is creating with JSX, is actually just plain old JavaScript objects. Those objects describe the DOM element that we want React to put onto the page for us. And if we look closely, we can see some interesting information here. First of all, we see that it has very similar properties, like we have class name, where we're setting that to header. Down here we have props, or short for properties. We have class name. We also have something called children, and we can see that's actually the text that we put inside of our H1. That's about all I care to touch on with the object nature of React elements, but I thought it would be helpful to kind of kick us off understanding that JSX is kind of like a function that, when it's run, returns us objects that React can interpret and use to create actual elements that get put on the screen for us. I'm going to comment this out so we can talk about one more thing. Clean up this a little bit.
Would we be able to manipulate that?
And I'll go
like changing the object name, and then like, would it change? Would it mess up our HTML, or is it going to work? That could be that could be a good question, you know?
Go ahead and put this directly back in line to my Reactdom.render, move these onto their own lines. The last thing that I wanted to touch on was that with JSX, we need to make sure that we are only returning a single parent element. In other words, I can't take this one h1 and place, say, a paragraph directly next to it. Because in this case, we're rendering or attempting to render two sibling elements that sit side by side. In fact, if I try to run this, you can see React complains, and I guess in this case it says unknown error. Sometimes it will say that you have to wrap the elements that you're trying to render in some kind of parent element. Now this doesn't mean that I can't put two elements on my page at any given time. It just means that I need to wrap them in something like a div, for example. So if I say a div that has an h1 and a paragraph inside, now I am rendering just one parent element, and it doesn't really matter how many.
So you cannot render two parent elements, is it right? I'm assuming that is.
Are included as long as I have one parent element that I'm rendering. So I can hit save. We'll see that this is working just fine.
Okay.
Now remember how I was able to save my h1 as a variable? Well, I can actually save a whole collection of JSX, for example, this div with the h1 and the paragraph, as a variable. So let's say const page equals, and then I can paste in my elements here. Now to me this looks a little bit crazy. So normally what I like to do is move my elements, my JSX, onto their own lines as if this were HTML. But in that case, I need
this is the same way that I do, like,
to go ahead and wrap everything in parentheses. Now take a second and think, how is it that I can then fix what I have down here? We can see we have a syntax error. How can I fix this so that when I refresh the page, this is still working?
Easy peasy lemon squeezy. We are going to do page here. Page here. Yes, but what if we do this? What if we do this? Another div. So let's code a full-on website. Right. Let's see. Let's do this. H2. Hello. Stream. Oops. A stream. Yes. Hello. A stream. Yes. Let's see. Why am I misclicking a lot of it? Right. So now, blah 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 blah. Why there's a syntax error here? Oh, see, it can only have one parent element. Now I see. See, senor. That's why. I see. So you can only have one parent element in this JSX. As they call it, JSX. It's XML something, I don't remember, but you can only have one parent element.
How to make this work again? The variable of page. So I should just be able to put page here. We can see that essentially we got what we had last time, but this time it's a little more involved. Specifically, in the children property of our div, we see that there's other React elements in there. I'm not going to dive too deep into that. Feel free to copy and paste what you see in the console, maybe clean it up a little bit and analyze it. But the point is, I can save a whole bunch of JSX into a single variable and then use that variable kind of like any other variable. The key is that's because what I'm getting back when I write my JSX is just a JavaScript object. I'm going to clean this page up a little bit. And I'm going to comment out our page because I'm going to give you a challenge.
Ooh.
Okay, I left our example of const page up here just for reference, but I did delete our code that we had at the bottom, which actually enabled us to put something on the screen. And that's because I want you to practice it again. So your challenge is to create a navigation bar using JS.
Guys, let me know what you think about React.js. Is it good? Bad? What's that? Nah.
JSX. I've given you some instructions here on what the content should actually be, And as I mentioned at the very end, don't worry about styling yet. We're going to cover styling soon, but for now, what you're going to have is just going to look like plain HTML that's unstyled. So pause the screencast here and see if you can complete this challenge.
I just dropped something.
Okay, before we worry about the Reactdom.render bit, I'm going to create...
Wait. No, I don't like these. Okay, we do these. We do this on our own. So we can remember. Muscle memory is key for anything. Language is probably one of the thing that need the most muscle memory. So we do navbar const use the semantic nav element as a parent wrappers. Right, we don't need any of that. We do react dom dot renders going to be open this. This is going to be nav slash nav okay, I have an h1 element with a brand name, your website. h1 going to be website. Insert an unordered list for the order nav element. Inside the UL have 3 li. Okay. UL. So first UL, not URL, but UL slash UL. Right, we do a list. Have 3 li slash li. Going to have this. Boop. And then for pricing about and contacts. Right, don't worry about the styling yet. Just planning out on how the website is going to look. So now we do document document.get element by ID, going to be root, and then we print this. Ooh-wee. Let's go. That's good. Sexy. Mwah.
Variable, we'll call it, actually let's call it navbar. And I'm going to use my parentheses so that I can start my element on the next line. And like I mentioned, we want to use the semantic nav element. And inside of there, I'm going to have an h1. Let's call it Bob's Bistro. Maybe this is a restaurant. Okay. Then we have an unordered list. And hopefully while you were playing with this, you came to realize that it doesn't matter how nested I get. Just like in HTML, I can nest this as deep as I want. We'll create 3 list items. And it said pricing, about, contact. And I don't know, maybe if this is a restaurant, I'll say menu instead of pricing. Okay, I've got my JSX for my navbar set up. And then the last bit, which was just meant to be something repetitive that allows you to get some muscle memory for this, is to use Reactdom.render. And the first parameter is what do I want to render, and that's my navbar JSX. And the second thing is where do I want to render it. I'm going to do that by selecting it's such this that you can reach out on Discord, ask your question, and you are more than likely to get a really friendly, helpful response back. When you're feeling pretty good about this, let's keep moving forward.
Let's move forwards.
Okay, at this point, it's probably time for us to switch away from the easy way of getting React set up in our project to the more correct way. Now, inside of Scrimba, that means something different than it means inside of your own local environment. Scrimba has kind of some magic that's happening under the hood that's helping React just kind of work in our project. So I'm going to show you a couple steps for how I do this in Scrimba. You won't really have to worry too much about that because even when you're creating your own new scrim in Scrimba, it'll just ask you what type of scrim you want and you'll just tell it that it's a React scrim and it'll set everything up for you. So what I need to do is in my index.html, I'm actually going to remove all of my unpackage.com CDNs here. So I can get rid of these 3 lines. And I don't need this type text Babel anymore because I'm not pulling in Babel. And instead, over here on the left, I'm going to add dependencies that I need. I need React, and I need React-DOM. If you're a little bit more familiar with developing in JavaScript, you might recognize that these dependencies are similar to having a package.json where you install these packages through npm. If pretty much everything I just said doesn't make sense, don't worry about it at all. I am going to talk about different options for local setup later. If you absolutely need to follow along your local environment instead of here on Scrimba.com, you can continue to use the CDN way that we were just using like this, but otherwise I just recommend doing things here inside of Scrimba. Our main focus is not going to be how to set up React, but rather how to write React. So I will take those back out, and now that I have taken those CDNs out, it means that I no longer have global variables added to my window like React DOM. So if I try to save this, we're going to see I have an unexpected token angle bracket, and that's because, well, it doesn't know what React is at all. What I need to do now is actually import React from React.
This is how we do it.
This might not seem like it's doing anything because I'm actually not referencing React anywhere here. I've got React DOM, but that's something different. However, React is where the JSX syntax is defined, and so I need to import React in order for this to work at all. Now, the astute among you might be familiar with the fact that with React version 17, I technically don't need to import React. However, currently, at the time of this recording, Scrimba is not yet set up to support the fact that React version 17 and above no longer requires you to import React in order for JSX to work. So anyway, throughout the duration of this course, I will be using import React from React, and that's because, well, I need to in this environment currently. Let's hit save again and see what we run into next. And this says, can I use import statement outside of a module? And oh, you know what? I think that has to do with another sort of magic piece that is happening under the hood with Scrimba. So I'm going to add this .pack. That's not something you'll need to do in the real world. So this should be, yep, React DOM is not defined. That's the error I expected to see. And that's because whenever we're using React DOM, I will also need to import React DOM from React-DOM. And now, fingers crossed, I should get something that works again. Okay, there we go. We're back on the screen, and everything is set up a little more similar to how you normally would see a React project set up. Don't be overly concerned with all of these implementation details. However, this is how I'm going to be setting up my projects from here on. And at this point,
guys, so this is like the basic that you need to know. Is how you're going to set up a perfect, fully functional React.js file, or so that you can use some React.js package or libraries. Yeah, so you can use some of the React.js elements. So it's just like a library. You just import some. And then it's going to be here.
We actually have enough knowledge for us to start working on this section's project, which is a static HTML page in React. However, before we jump into that, I want to exercise your brain with a little thought experiment, and we are going to do that in the next screencast.
Next screencast. La 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 la.
Before we move on, I wanted to include a quick update. Since this course was originally recorded, React has released React version 18 and React DOM version 18. And there's actually a pretty fundamental change to how you set up a React app from the beginning, like we show here. I think this update will be helpful, especially for anybody who is following along on their own machine and installing React from scratch, because React is automatically coming in as React version 18 now. You're probably getting a warning. The change has to do with how React is rendering its root element, which, as we see here, originally is Reactdom.render. Tell it what you want to render as the first parameter to the render method. And the second thing is where you want to render that, or the root of your application. Let's go ahead and update our dependencies to React 18. This is probably not something you're able to see, but you'll see these numbers change to 18.2. Then I'm going to hit save and see we get this new warning in the console. Now everything is working just fine, but it's telling us that Reactdom.render isn't supported in React 18, and we should use something called create root instead. It also lets us know that until we switch to using create root with the new API, the app is going to behave as if it's running React 17. There's a lot of other really cool improvements that come with React 18 that we are not going to be able to use unless we change the way that we are rendering our application. Fortunately, it's really simple. So let's close the console for some space. The very first thing we need to do is we are not going to import Reactdom just from Reactdom, but instead from a sort of subfolder called Reactdom/client. So that's the first change, really simple. Second, instead of having render take two parameters, what you want to render and the root of your application, where you want to render it, instead you need to create a root first and then use that root to render what you want. I'm going to comment this out just for reference. On the next line, I'm going to write the new way of doing this as a chain, then we'll see how this oftentimes is represented like in the React docs as maybe not a chain but separate commands. That'll make more sense when we do it. So first I'm going to say reactdom.create root, and I need to tell it where I want the root to be. And so that's going to be my same root element here. I'm going to grab my document.getElementById root, paste it in there. Now this will return something called a root, and that root has a method called render. And render is going to be what we want to render. So I can put my navbar here. You can tell really we're just...
So like the new way is a little bit more specific to which element that you want. So only for the element root. Now it's going to be more specific. So you have to follow this rule. And in order for it to run Reactdom 18.2 or React 18.2, or it's not going to run it as React 18.2. It is just going to run you for the React 17, right? Okay, I see.
Just adding this method call to root, and we're sort of rearranging the order in which we're doing things. Now I can hit save, everything is working, and our warning is gone. It may not seem like it, but under the hood, we're now running React 18 with all of the extra benefits that come with React 18. Now I'm finding that the documentation doesn't usually, or at least doesn't very often, write the create root this way. Instead, they create a root as a separate line, and then they render that root. So I just wanted to show you what that looks like so that it isn't confusing. Usually you'll see something like this that says root is from reactdom.createRoot, and then we have our document.getElementById call here. And then separately they'll say root.render the navbar in our case. These two things are essentially equivalent. One takes two lines and one takes one line and chains the methods together. I believe there are other things you can do with root besides just render, so doing them on separate lines will give you that power if you need to. For everything that we do in this course, we would really just be rendering our JSX that we want to render. So if you're following along locally, you're more than welcome to just do this all in one line, or of course if you want, you can do it in two lines. Because the remainder of this course was
the best way is going to be to just one line, but one line you have to remember it a lot more. Right, two lines you break it down into smaller tasks. It's good for beginners, but as you go later on, you have to remember the one line.
Already recorded. I'm not going to be using this going forward because the course will still be using React 17. But now, if you're following along locally, you'll know exactly what you need to do to follow along using React 18 without having to worry about that warning that keeps popping up. Okay, that's everything. Let's keep moving forward.
Let's go, let's go, let's go, let's go. Let's go. Thought experiment. Use a pen
I'd
instead
like
of
to do a quick thought
this.
experiment with you, and that is to figure out why we're using Reactdom.render instead of just using the DOM append method that you've probably used before in JavaScript. I've written the first line for you, and that's to import React from React. That will just allow you to write some JSX. Your challenge, as you can see in this little 4-step process here, is to create just a really simple sample page in JSX. It has to be greater than or equal to 4 elements, just to get your fingers working a little bit. And I want you to save that JSX to a variable. Remember that that variable needs to be one parent element with some children elements nested inside of it. In other words, we can't just have 2 sibling elements saved in a variable in JSX. Then I want you to select the div with the ID of root using whatever selector you want to use. Then use .append to append your JSX. If you need to do a quick Google search for how to use .append, that's totally fine. Then before you run...
Wait a minute. Find out what happened if we try to append JSX to our div roots using the pen. I still don't get this. This stupid line right here. Wait, let me go to the toilet first. I'm back here and I'm going to study. Find out what happened if we try to append the JSX to our div root. Create a sample page. Okay. Create a sample page. Create a sample page. What? Create a sample page? What does that mean? Create a sample page in JSX, more than 4, and then save them in a variable. Right. So we do React DOM dot create roots. Select the div with the ID of root and use append to append your JSX. What? Render is going to be 4 lines, right? It's going to be slash div. Then we do h1 hello h2 slash h1. What is the order in GTA? No, in the movie. Biggie's orders. Burgers orders. Oh, what is the meme? The meme. Go check a shot at and pen price and something like that. I don't remember. My memory is pretty dog shit. I have to train my memory. Hello, my name is hello, my name is chicka chicka chicka. Chicka chicka choo. Chicka choo. Boom. Right, is this going to be rendered in? This is going to be rendered in the. First of all, I think we need to import the DOM first, right? Import React DOM from where import React DOM. I like it. I like yeah, DOM slash client, right? Right, mate. That's right. So this is going to be a const, and this is going to be called divl equal. This is going to be document dot get element by ID, open root But we need to get the roots out first, right? Create a sample page in JS and save them as a variable. Oh, what is this? Const, right? Select the div with the ID of root and use append to append your JSX. Document. Get element by ID, root, append. I'm assuming it's like this. Devel. Let's see if you can guess what will show up in the browser before running the code. I don't think it works. Unknown required. I don't think we need this. Cannot access. See if you can explain what actually show up in the browsers.
In your code, I want you to surround everything. Use about it. Again, the JS code's append.
Yes, I did the same things.
Method to append our page, and we'll see what shows up here. Now, of course, I know what's going to show up, so I'm just going to run the code, and we see that we get object.
Why mine does it look like that? What? I basically have the same things. Oh, because I have to run this. Alright, now we run. Object. It's probably how do I say it? It's unidentified.
Object. This object is sort of a string representation of a regular JavaScript object. Something I can do to actually...
Oh, console log. And we will see what happened. Console log. And we do devel. See? Wow. All of them is no. No.
Make that object appear is to stringify it using JSON. So I can actually say JSON.stringify, and we will stringify that object so that it puts JSON on the page. I'll hit save, and look at that. We get a JavaScript object. Now, step 4, see if you can explain why this actually shows up in the browser. Well, kind of the whole purpose of this thought experiment was to remind you that JSX returns plain JavaScript objects. At this point in time, it has nothing to do with the DOM. It's not recognized by the browser as anything important dealing with the DOM. It's only when we try to render it using Reactdom.render that React can take these JavaScript objects and actually turn them into real DOM elements that the browser can interpret as things like first level headers or ordered lists. So let's go ahead for the sake of practice and fix this. I'm going to update our challenge here. Okay, simply put, your challenge is to fix our code. And don't forget, we're not using those CDNs in our HTML anymore, which is what used to give us a global variable called Reactdom. So you'll have to see if you can remember how we get access to Reactdom. Pause the screencast here and try to fix our code.
How do we access to React? There's no global React. Huh? What?
In order to use Reactdom, I will need to import it. And we'll import it from the Reactdom package. Then, instead of selecting my div with the ID of root, actually, I'm going to need that anyway.
So that's what he wants.
There, I'll say Reactdom.root. Reactdom.render. The thing I want to render is my page, so we'll put page, and the where I want to render it is inside of that div with the ID of root. I'm going to comment this out so it doesn't break it. We'll hit save, and there we go. Awesome. So simply put, Reactdom's job, or the Reactdom.render method's job, is to take React elements and interpret them in a way that turns them into real DOM elements that the browser can understand. Okay, with that understanding, it's only a small jump to work on our section project, which is to build a static page in React. We're going to start the first steps of that in the next screencast.
Static page. Right. Project part 1. Markup.
Okay, we're finally at our first challenge. I'm really excited to start working on this. I've included a Google slide of what you're aiming for with this challenge. Notice there's really no styling being applied here at all. It's just bare HTML. So if we go look at the challenge, essentially you are starting completely from scratch, and your job is to build the HTML for our section project as you see it here. We'll be adding just a little bit of styling to it later after we learn how to do that. And I've included a couple hints here. For simplicity, I've imported the React logo file directly into our file explorer here, which means that you can reference it in your image element that you create with source equals and then using a /react-logo.png. I also have a hint here about how to set the width attribute. Just remember that JSX is almost identical to HTML, and in fact, for what you're working on here, you really shouldn't see any difference between the JSX that you'll write and what you would normally write in HTML. Don't forget that we are no longer using our CDNs, so you'll have to remember how to bring in React, Reactdom, and so forth. That's all the hints I'm going to give you, so pause the screencast.
It's a file in the project tree, so you can access it by using screen. Check your Google slide for what you trying to build. Boom, 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 boom. You can also set the width attribute of the image element, just like in HTML in the style. Set it to 40 pixels. Right. Alright. We will do this. We will do this. Right. So first of all, we want to import React from React, right? And we import these good. Yeah, very good here, very good, sir. Right now we do the build and renders the blah 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 const. We do page equal open. Why am I always misclicking? Const page. What we do here is going to be h1 img first. First of all, we have to do a div, so that is not going to, there's can only be one parent, right? Div / div. Okay, h1 h2 h3 h1 img first, img src. Here is going to be this. equal, right, and then we do width equal 40 pixel, 40 pixel. Close this, close this. How do we set width for width, image width, image width and height? CSS, not CSS, HTML, HTML, HTML. Oh, so it cannot be 40 pixel. Instead, it should be this. 40, right? Can do pixel. So it's only take pixel. Right, right. H1, and then the H2, H3. This is going to be fun fact about React. Where can I see this? Blah 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 ul slash ul li close slash li close, and then we do boom paste paste. We don't have to close image HTML, right? Why is it not working? No correspondent. Closing tag. Slash div. Close. Closing tab for image. I'm guessing you should do this. So it's going to end itself. Right, we do 5 lists. Too lazy for that, so we are going to do this. Boop. Boop, boop, boop. Okay, 5 lists. Right, you can set the width attribute. And then what do we do here? You can also set so we do renders DOM dot create routes, right? Renders DOM. No, it's a Reactdom React. There's no like what is it called? Suggestion, code suggestion from Scrimba for React.js. And what happening to my computer is questionable. React DOM dot create routes. React DOM dot create routes. Is it going to be all lowercase? Create routes. Routes. And then open document dot get element by ID. Going to be routes. What happened? Routes, right? And then we do dot renders. Then we do, what do we render here? Okay, the page, right? Then run the code. Do we have to do this? What if I try and write it in this? Why is it not working? Unknown require.
Here and work on this chat React and how we can do this in a more conventional.
Oh, you don't have to do React client. Okay. So what is all this React client and React DOM is? Working now? Default creator. Oh, create root. It's not creators. Create root. So it's just create root. Create root is not defined. What the fuck? Document.get element ID. React DOM. For this const root equal React DOM is not defined. What? What the fuck?
Way for the same, put the parent element here instead.
Renders. We just render that. Oh, we are running on React DOM. Oh my god. No crap, it's not going to work. Okay, React DOM. Because we are running on the React 17, it's not going to work because there's no function. There's no function called create root, because that is a function in React 18, and we are doing in the old React, so they have to update this lesson so that it's going to be better. So this page, and then we do document dot get element by ID root, and then boom.
Sibling elements. And the first thing I'll refresh this and React my image. This will to where we wanted to get to with our goal here.
Yes.
Go ahead and clean up
Yes,
some of the
senor.
comments up here from the challenge. And great work. Hopefully you were able to follow along with that. Now, like I mentioned, saving all of our JSX to a single variable like this actually isn't really that common, nor is it convenient at all. So what we're going to start covering is a much more common way, and that is by creating custom components. Before we jump into that, I want to give you a quick quiz over the topics that we've talked about so far, and we will do that in the next screencast.
Pop quiz. Woo! Do some pop quiz. Wow. Wow.
Before jumping right into the next topic, I thought it would be smart to have a quick little pop quiz on some of the topics that we've covered up to this point. Because this is Scrimba, you can just click into this quiz.md file and answer the questions here. So pause the screencast and work on this quiz.
Right, why do we need to import React? This is a library, so we have to import it. It's an external, it's like an open source library, so we have to import it to our computer or to whatever we are doing so that it can activate, so it can be used inside our file. It's not going to do some Oompa Loompa and it's going to appear in your computer. If I were to console log page in index.html, what would show up? What is wrong with this code? There's two parents. Two parents, no good. We only want one parent. One parent, good. Kind of the opposite in life. In life, you have to have a fathers and mothers. Over here, just one. Either fathers, either mothers. Just one parents. One parents. Remember that rules. React only wants one parent and one parent only. Right, if I were console log page and index blah blah blah, it's going to be an object. It's not going to be anything else, just a list of object, nothing more, nothing less, just a list of object. What does it mean for something to be declarative instead of imperative? Declarative, you type in something and it's automatically do it for you. Not automatically, but you have to declare it, and then it's going to do all the steps that you need. Like, it is coded with like some steps into it. Imperative, you have to declare, or you have to tell them, hey, open this, and it's go to only be open that, nothing more, nothing less. And then it's just step by step. Declarative, you have a function that can do a lot of things inside just one line of code, and then you just type in and it's going to do that for you. Composable, not really sure, I don't remember what it is. Let's see what composable is.
That React be part of our code base. So I will go type that over here. React is what defines JSX. So in order to use JSX, we need to import React. If I were to console log the page in our index.js file, what would show up? Hopefully you actually attempted to answer this question before just going ahead and console logging it. Before I hit save, I know that page is a bunch of JSX, which in reality just returns some JavaScript objects. So when I console log page, I should just see inside JSX to wrap your JSX in some. Next is number 4. What does it mean for English? And it would, an example I like to think of this is to imagine myself asking a friend to make a peanut butter and jelly sandwich for me. If I were doing that declaratively, I could simply say, could you make me a peanut butter and jelly sandwich? And I would assume that they knew how to take care of the individual steps.
Yes, imperative is more like the stupid way, you know. Declarative, let's say you want to make coffee. Okay, now you need water. Now you need hot water, boil water, and it's going to be all included in one function called make coffee. Let's say that. That's declarative. Imperative, you have to tell them step by step. So, you have to declare. You have to say, hey, boil water. Hey, put in the coffee. Hey, stir the coffee. Blah 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 blah. It's basically step by step, but you have to tell them what to do. To do so. If I were being imperative, on the other hand, I would have to tell them to grab a slice of bread with their fingers and place that slice of bread gently on a plate. Then to grab a knife from the drawer and to put the knife into a jar of peanut butter, and so forth. There certainly are times when something imperative is warranted. However, generally speaking, writing, I can tell the things I need to their own that I put together to make a greater whole. In terms of web development, it means I can take pieces of my UI, my user interface, and put them into their own components, and then piece those components together to build my page. So what does it mean for something to be composable? It means that we have small pieces that we can put together
larger. And I'll even say greater than the individual pieces. This is a pretty broad definition of composable because cross and more and more exciting from there. So strap yourselves in and let's keep moving.
Strap myself in. Have you seen that movie, Top Guns? Oh my god, that's such a good movie. Like, wow, I haven't watched the full movie. But Jesus Christ, that movie take like efforts to make. But it's so cool because like they are flying like real fighters. And they actually have to experience everything. It's a pretty cool movie, to be honest. I will watch it tonight. Yeah.
When we talked about composability being one of the major benefits of React, we talked about the possibility in React to create our own custom components. What we currently have going on is we're saving our JSX elements here, our React elements, in a variable, and then rendering that variable directly with Reactdom.render. And although this has been working for us so far, it doesn't allow us a lot of flexibility when it comes to creating our own components in React. And even further, it's also pretty obvious we wouldn't want to take all of our markup and stuff it directly into Reactdom.render, even though I think technically this might work just fine. Actually, I'm curious. Let's give this a shot and comment this out. Okay, so everything is technically still working, but we run into the same issue as we used to in kind of the old days of creating HTML code, where if we're trying to stuff everything into one place, not only do the elements not become reusable, but it becomes really difficult to maintain as a developer. So creating our variable up here got us one step closer, but it's still not quite good enough. Instead, what we are going to start learning about is creating our own custom components. Now, I gave you a taste of this early on in the course, but we're going to actually learn it the real way now. In programming, the concept of a function is one that allows us to write some code that we can then execute over and over and over again, just by calling that function. And React adopts this same concept of having a function that allows us to create user interface or create elements over and over and over again if we wanted to. Knowing how functions work, it's really tempting to say, okay, well, I'm going to create a function, and let's give it a temporary name for just a second. And we might say, well, I have a function, and I want it to return my UI, my elements here, anytime that function gets called. So I might try something like this. Let me get rid of page here, and then instead of page, we might say, well, let's call our temporary name function, and that is going to return the React elements that we asked it to, and therefore we have a function that we can reuse. Well, let's see what happens. Look at that. It actually worked. And what we have here is basically 90% of the way into creating our own custom components. A function like this that returns React elements is considered in React a component. However, there's a couple of conventions that we need to follow for everything to work correctly all the time.
Okay.
The first one is we need to use Pascal case instead of camel case for our component names. All that means is I need to capitalize the first letter of my component. And secondly, instead of calling this function with parentheses like we might be used to, we actually need to wrap it in angle brackets similar to an HTML element. And I still need to change this to a capital letter there. And that's the only changes we need to make from a regular JavaScript function that you have probably written hundreds of by now, and a React component that uses the same concept of functions to create reusable user interface pieces. You'll see if I hit save, everything is still working as we would expect. Okay, maybe you can feel it. It's time for a practice. I'm actually going to erase pieces. I need to capitalize the first letter of my component. And secondly, instead of calling this function with parentheses like we might be used to, we actually need to wrap it in angle brackets similar to an HTML element. And I still need to change this to a capital letter there. And that's the only changes we need to make from a regular JavaScript function that you have probably written
It's not
hundreds
too
of by now.
bad. It's not like completely different things, but you still have to remember this. Because if you don't remember the syntax, it's going to bug you. It's going to be a pain in the ass for like a long time.
And a React component that uses the same concept of functions to create reusable user interface pieces. You'll see if I hit save, everything is still working as we would expect. Okay, maybe you can feel it. It's time for a practice. We're actually going to erase everything because you are going to write everything again from scratch.
Wow.
First, I'll write out the challenge for you. Okay, I've erased our code and saved it so that our page went away. This challenge is going to be given to you in two parts. The first part is to create an ordered list that enumerates the reasons why you're excited to be learning React. Don't spend too much time trying to come up with a huge list.
Right, let's see. It should return an order list. The reason why you're excited learning about JS. React, alright. So we do function. Hey, why is my typing is so shit today? Page. Going to be this. Hey, no. Wrong way. We return. Going to be it's going to be turn this. Open bracket, right? Should be this. Div. A list, so UL LI Control D, Control D, Control D. Slash LI. This. Hey, computer. I like React. Blah, blah, and blah. Right. So now, first of all, we have to import. Good practice is that we import React from React. And we import Reactdom. Fucking dumbass. From what is it? React something, right? Reactdom, yes. Hey. Copy. Right. So now what do we do next? We are going to do React DOM, baby. And then we do renders. Open brackets. Page. It's going to be the open page. Pager, and then this. And then this is going to be document.get element by ID. Document get element by ID. Get element by ID is going to be this. And then what do we paste it into? Root. It's always the root. Root files, baby. Root. And we save and we run. Yes. There we go.
Just put a few things in an ordered list. Test and work React. Spell Let's start with just some inline JSX here. We'll say it's working. And I need to select my root element to create our own, or in other words, some JSX that are my page component, as we've learned. Turn this into an to be the Google Kit. Second item here. And just so you can see everything, I'm gonna move this onto its online there. Say I'm more likely to get a job as a developer if I the unstyled element you are simply beginning happy to answer. But don't just plow forward if you're still feeling confused. Do some research, rewatch some of the videos, make sure you're doing all of the challenges, and then when you're ready, let's go forward and we'll work on part 2.
Oh, we're back a little bit. Woo!
The next part of our challenge is to add some more elements to our page here. First, I want you to add a header element with a nested nav element inside, and then inside the nav, you'll have a nested image element with the source that I've mentioned here, and some other notes that you should read through. I also want you to add an H1 element that will go below the header element, but above the ordered list. And at the very bottom, underneath the ordered list, I want you to add a footer element with some text that I have here. Make sure to read through the whole challenge there so you get a better idea of what you need to be working on. And as always, pause the screencast here and work on this challenge.
Add a header element with a nested nav element inside the nav, including img. Alright, sir. With a nav element. H1 with some describing text. I'll live it up now. I could cook it. Wait, where do we put this? In the page? So we do headers. It will not work for now. Should be nested in. Slash. And I could cook it. Hit. Who hit? Nav. Cannot be a nav. And inside React logo, make sure to set the width of something more manageable that doesn't take the whole screen at H1 with some text describing the page. Okay. So I'm assuming this is going to be blah 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 blah. This is going to be the nav. Wait, let's see. Wait, let's go back here to the nav list so that we can imagine how it would looks like. Slash nav. Now we do the what is it called? Nav. Nav including image. IMGs. And we do src equal this. Here. And then width 40. Oi oi oi. Equal. And we close. We have to self-close it. It's not going to be like CSS where you have to self-close the tag. And make sure set the width to something at an H1 with some text describing the page. Alright, H1 slash H1. I wish there's like some like code recommendation in Reactjs, but I'll just writing this based on my muscle memory. If I'm wrong, I'm wrong. Place it above the order list. At the footers after the list, say right. Footers slash footers. And then what do we do here? Call this P. It's called P. I don't know. What should it be? Slash P. (2022) Tongchuan. Alright, a reserve. Yeah. Guys, don't steal my page. I'm going to fucking sue you. Alright. We are good. Alright, very good.
One of the biggest tricks in this challenge is to make sure that you don't just try to add a header. Hopefully that didn't cause too many headaches for anyone, but the big exponent, a lot of times you'll see people just wrap it in a div, like this. Nav is, inside of question mark, give it a width describing the have this problem all invite to see what it looks like. Lithic, paste one, and so forth.
Small tag would be way better. Custom component quiz.
Okay, it's quiz time again. Read through the questions in the quiz, actually click into the editor, type down your answers, and if you find yourself not knowing the answer to one of these...
React component is just a function that you have few lines of code to declare what that is. What's wrong with this code? Turn small and tiny text. Oh, it should be capitalized. M should be capitalized. It's not like a normal JS function. It should be like a React function. So you have to do what you have to do in conventional way is to, I think it's a rule as well. I'm not sure if it's conventional or is it like a rules that React.js requires you to just do it. Why am I stumbling? The M should be capitalized. What's wrong with this code? That's good. That is nav mg. Looks right. Reactdom renders. Oh, it should be like this. Should be. Oh, this quiz too easy. Should be this, and then headers slash this. Boom. We are too good with the quiz.
Don't just kind of plow ahead, but instead actually do some research. See if you... So the quiz is our React elements. React elements are the objects that get created when we return JSX. So although this looks very much like HTML, remember this is JSX, which is a special syntax of React, and under the hood it's returning a regular JavaScript interface. And that just means that it's a component, but I can... What is wrong with the following code? It's a really small difference, but it's an important one. The components that you create need to begin with a capital letter. I guess you could say difference in them. Instead of calling our function regular HTML. Short and sweet. Nice job on that quiz. Hopefully you were able to follow along. Next, we're going to move forward and see how we can do a better job of composing our components together.
Too short. Right. So I think I will end the stream here, and we will do it say afternoon. We'll do it in the afternoon. Hopefully I can get in like 2 more hours studying from 1 till 3, or like from 1 till 4, hopefully 3. Usually I'm not super focused after like 4 hours. So at 3 hours, 3.5 hours is like the best time. So yes, see you guys in the afternoon.